Welcome back to the Impact Agent Podcast. I am your host, Jason Will. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. It's a special one. I am interviewing Tyler Steenken from Realty Resource. If you're not familiar with Cole, get ready to be blessed by this high ROI, low cost, high listing lead generation tool for real estate agents. He's going to break down several strategies and even some case studies from the most successful real estate agents across the country that use Cole to generate a massive amount of listing leads for their real estate business. So without further ado, my interview with Tyler from Realty Resource. Ready? Ready to rock and roll? Is that action? All right.
Okay. That's right. All right. Absolutely. Go.
Hello, everybody. It's Jason Will with
Go.
So this is a real estate podcast, but we talk about leadership, personal growth, and becoming the best version of yourself. Leadership, check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Growth, best version of yourself. Go. So this is a real estate podcast. Tyler, welcome to the Impact Agent Podcast.
Super excited to be with you.
I'm excited to have you on. You're going to share some super tactical information with us today on how agents can, grow their business, build their pipeline, and make 2020 their best year in real estate. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. Now's the time to be doing it too, right, Jason? As you know, it's only a couple months away, right? And so now's the time if agents really want to be successful and have high goals for next year. Now's when they got to start having that roadmap out there and start putting, rolling up their sleeves and making it happen. So super excited to kind of share some tips of some success strategies to help agents along the way and make that happen next year.
So tell us a little bit about Cole. I see here in your notes, it's got a 70-year history. And I'm trying to think how long it's been when this whole circle prospecting, strategy came about. And it was like, oh, this is like the latest and greatest, newest form of prospecting in real estate, but it's been around for a while.
Yeah. So forever, I always say. So 70 years, right? So 7 decades. We've been in the business of helping not just realtors, right, but any small business to really work a neighborhood, right? So before technology, before the internet, even 15 years ago when I started here, all we sold were big old crisscross directories. And so for some of you guys listening, you might be familiar with the term, but essentially they were a book that you could buy in about any market across the country. But unlike a phone book that was by last name, these directories were by street name. So I could buy one, let's say for Nashville or Memphis or Lincoln, Nebraska, where I live, and open up the directory, go find everybody on Patterson Street, and would tell me on house number 505 Patterson 506, who lives there, their phone number, how long they lived there, etc. So it's a great way for any business to really work with the neighbors, right? And then fast forward, though, today, it's obviously all online and where you could search by neighborhoods or zip codes. And we have, cell phone numbers, emails, and all these other data attributes that you can, query the database as well. But yeah, we've kind of reinvented ourselves over the years.
Well, I look at this. I look at Cole as like kind of door knocking on steroids. Like I know door knocking is profitable, but I think it's really something in high urban traffic areas. We have a massive territory. We're the largest county in the state of Alabama, and if you're going to be effective at door knocking, you're going to burn some calories. So yeah, Cole kind of takes a lot of that legwork out of it and lets us really develop relationships and new contacts, much more quickly.
Absolutely, right? Or like in Lincoln, Nebraska, where I live, there's 2 or 3 months out of the year you just couldn't even door knock. It's not physically possible to do it, right? And the same thing in the dead heat of Nashville, in Alabama, where you're at in July.
You die.
It's just
literally die,
right? And then for folks, exactly. And if you're still door knocking and doesn't matter where you're at, think about a multi-channel up, right? So instead of just door knocking, to also add in cell phone numbers, email addresses. So now that neighborhood that you're wanting to go after, they're hearing from you multiple different ways. And that's what I'd like to kind of share with everybody here during the podcast, are just 3 different ways to use a multi-channel approach at a very hyper-local area to have conversations with people, get your name out there, right? And so I always tell the story, 7 or 8 years ago, we were online, but we only had landline phone numbers. And we had a big picture of Blockbuster up in our office that says, well, how do we not become them? How do you,
Right.
you need to stay relevant? You need to reinvent yourself. And that's why we went out and got sources to get cell phone numbers, to get email addresses, to get data attributes like, credit rating and length of residence and wealth and hobbies, all these different ways. So you can go out there and have meaningful conversations with folks, right? And so a little bit about myself, like I said, I've been here for 15 years. So I manage all of our partnerships, whether it's, different coaches, brokerages, that sort of thing. And so I'm traveling the country all the time, right? And so one of the things I share with folks when I'm having these conversations with people like you is rarely on stage do I hear agents say that they're just crushing it, spending thousands of dollars each month on buying leads, right? Mm-hmm. One of the common themes I hear is that the most successful agents, they're focusing on having more conversations every day about buying and selling real estate, right? So you have your database, you have your sphere, but then who's the next person? Who else can you be reaching out to? Because you can spend thousands of dollars each month on buying Zillow leads. You can do all that kind of stuff. But is there an ROI with that? Right? And that's what I challenge everybody I talk to. Yeah, if you're doing something, are you having a profit with that? Right? Because you need to have a profit and an ROI to stay in business. And that's why like a platform like ours, we have such a high renewal rate and so many people that love our product because we charge, around $100 a month. So very, very affordable to get as many phone numbers and emails for all the neighborhoods that you would ever want throughout that month. And then we teach that you should be having conversations with people. So around trigger events, around just listed, around just sold, around mega open houses, all that stuff. And a multi-channel approach. So door knocking, picking up the phone and calling, dropping voicemails, sending emails, all of that. And that's how we met each other. Right. So I remember it was a couple of years ago, I always press our inside sales team to ask on every call, well, how did you hear about us? What prompted you to reach out to us? And your name came up several times. And so kind of tell me about that, Jason. Why were you telling people to reach out to us?
Well, I mean, it just goes along with what you said. I mean, it's super affordable and highly effective, high ROI tool. And I mean, those are my favorite ones. I mean, the ones that are most affordable that generate the most bang, for your buck. And, we haven't been one of those big Zillow spenders. We've got colleagues that spend upwards of $20,000 a month, and maybe some of their vendors are picking that up. But, I think the most we ever spent $3,000 to $5,000, but that's a month. I mean, you're saying like this is $100 a month,
right? Yeah.
Versus $3,000 to $5,000 a month. But for me too, it's like you mentioned all these like reasons to reach out to people. But it was the leverage. Like I can leverage buyers that I have. If I've got a buyer need, I can leverage that. If I've got, new listing coming on, a coming soon, a pocket listing. I mean, it's the leverage. Leverage is like one of my favorite words in real estate. Yeah. And so you can download these reports and get these addresses and phone numbers and cell phone numbers and email addresses, and you can make a quote unquote cold call. But you can also make all these warm calls, and it's so versatile that, I just had to tell everybody that are in my mastermind groups and everybody that I know, like, what are you using to crush it? We're using Cold Realty Resource. I mean, it's one of those things where somebody gave that gift to me. I can't remember if it was at a conference or, a time event or a mastermind, and I'm paying it forward. That's it.
I love it. And so, NAR will put out all these different studies too, Jason. Again, what do you believe and not believe and with that kind of stuff. But one of them that I heard a while back was that 70% of all sellers will only interview one agent to list and sell their home, right? So think about it. So as I talk to agents, I challenge them, well, what are you guys doing to get in front of folks before they raise their hand already? Because if they raise their hand, they're already probably now they're with an agent, and once that agent gets an interview with them, it's a good chance they're going to go with them, right? So that's what we talk about is ways to leverage trigger events in a neighborhood as a way to have meaningful conversations with people. And then based on that trigger, like you said, it's not even as much of a cold call. It's a warm call. It's an educational call. It's an informational call as well. And so I have 3 different, success stories, strategies on how to take data and leverage it. Do you mind if I share those as well?
No, and I would just point out that, we're on the Impact Agent podcast. All of these case studies are like agents that are making big impacts in their communities. You've got East Coast to West Coast.
Yep.
I think agents, they need to hear these success stories, and I just want them to know, like, these are some of the most successful agents in the country.
Yeah. Yeah. So 2 of my 3 are top 100 agents across the country and have been using our platform
There you go.
for like a decade. Right. And so the first guy I love talking about is Greg Harrelson. So he's a top 1% agent nationwide. He's based out of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I have to give Greg the props because I love this term, community dominator. How do you become a community dominator? Right. And just because it kind of has a sexy slang to it, right? And
strong, very strong.
All right. And so I asked Greg, well, what do you do? How do you become a community dominator? And so he talks about, finding a farm and being everything for everybody within that farm, right? So you want to find a farm with maybe a higher turnover rate, or a farm that, you live in or go to church in, right? A reason that you're connected to that neighborhood. And he goes, one of the first things that he does is that he'll maybe do a community event and invite all the neighbors to participate. So he goes, I don't just go in right away and ask everybody, hey, are you wanting to sell? He'll do maybe a movie in the park, right? Or maybe a food drive for the People's City Mission. And so now you can go into a product like Cole, grab the 800 people that live in Pine Oak subdivision and email everybody and call everybody and door knock everybody and invite them to the neighborhood park on Saturday from noon to 2. We'll be collecting canned food for the People's City Mission. We'd love for you to stop by. And if you can't make it, we'll come, pick up canned food on your porch, right? But when you do things like that, it's a very non-intrusive way, right, to introduce yourself to everybody in that neighborhood. But then he goes, you have to ask questions. You have to have conversations with people. So when you have that opportunity, you ask, well, how long have you lived in the neighborhood? Where are you from originally? Have you ever thought about moving back there? Right. So you're creating a need there by open-ended questions. Jason, what do you love about this neighborhood? Is there anything that you don't like about it? And so what Greg will say is when we ask these questions, a lot of times people will say things like, well, we love the neighborhood, but our last daughter graduated, a couple of years ago. A lot of our friends have moved. We're going to maybe downsize soon. And guess what? You just got yourself a lead. Someone that hasn't talked to another realtor yet, they're not getting informed market updates from someone else. That's someone that's a high priority for you to follow up with, right? That's kind of step 1 of owning a community, becoming a community dominator. But then after that, it's notifying the neighborhood anytime there's any sort of activity. There's a new listing, a just sold, an open house. It gives you a reason to network with those neighbors. Let them know what's going on, right? What Greg will do is he'll create a monthly e-newsletter specific for that neighborhood. So if it's Pine Oak subdivision, he'll get the 300 emails or 500 emails that he can out of Cole. And then as he's meeting with people and door knocking, getting more emails, adding it to that database that he has. And then he'll create a newsletter with a subject line, Pine Oak subdivision e-newsletter, right? And he'll provide information to be known as the industry expert. So he goes, I don't give them my grandma's chili recipe, right? I don't want to be known as a cook. I give them a bank statement for their neighborhood, right? The number of transactions that happened. Are home values up? Are they down? Maybe a new restaurant opened up, right? Give them value. And then he goes, think long-term. You do this enough, you build people start knowing you. But then you're going to get a lot of short-term leads out of it as well that we talked about. The last kind of strategy that Greg then does is he'll actually upload that same list into Facebook for a custom audience, right? And you can do that very, very affordable. So folks are, they're hearing him, they're seeing him everywhere. He's omnipresent. So thoughts on that strategy, Jason?
Well, I mean, it just goes to show you like how robust this product is. And it's really just it's the catalyst that has all these other just kind of domino effects and how you can kind of piece them all together. It's like the foundation. But a lot of people, I think, are just out there going, how do you get the addresses and how do you get the names and the phone number and the emails? But I mean, this is where it starts with a product like Cole. And I think a lot of agents are in overwhelm, and this just simplifies everything. And this is a way that an agent hearing this, you can very easily and quickly implement this. We talked when we started the podcast, or maybe it was before we hit record, about how, like now's the time you need to be building your business for 2020. Mm-hmm. And this is something they could definitely get and start implementing to start seeing results, big results in Q1. And like you've already said, I mean, Greg's one of the top, in the top 1% of agents nationally, has his own podcast, all about value. So the proof's in the pudding here, my man. I mean, he does it, he kills it. That's all you need to say. And it also points out, how much, that we, like my real estate team, could be so much more consistent and be utilizing this product so much more than we already do. So this is a great reminder for me as a team leader as well. Yeah,
I love it. Love it. And so my second case study I like to talk about too. The third one is going to be another mega agent, right? Who's a top 1% agent. But I know a lot of people on this call or on this podcast aren't top 1% agents, right? There's some that are getting started, and I don't want them to feel overwhelmed either. And so the second case study I like to talk about too is John Mosillo, because he's doing a couple transactions a month, right? So he's not this agent doing hundreds or thousands of transactions a month. And what I liked about John when I talked to him recently is that he's like, Tyler, I'm not one of those guys to pick up the phone and make phone calls. That's just not in my DNA. I'm not going to do it. But we're on mutual Facebook groups together, and he reached out to me because he wanted to share his success story on how he had success using Cole. What he did is essentially he had a family that lived in a super busy street right now, and they wanted to move. They wanted to sell their house, and they told him, John, you can sell our property, but we're not going to list it until we find a house in the neighborhood that we want to live in, right? We're going to be picky this time, right? So they wanted to live in a certain neighborhood. So John actually went into Cole. He had a subscription with us. Same thing, went and mapped out a specific neighborhood. So, let's say, Edenton South neighborhood, got the 500 people that live there. And he took the cell phone numbers, downloaded it to Excel, and then uploaded it into SliDial. So Sly Broadcast, where you can drop a voicemail, but the phone never rings, right? And they have a broadcast feature where you could drop 50 voicemails or 500 voicemails at the same time. So he dropped a voicemail, say this: hi there, my name is John. I'm a local real estate agent. My office is actually just down the road from you guys. And I was calling because I have a great family that would love to live in your neighborhood. They live on Patterson Street right now, which is a super busy street, and they have 2 young kids, and they just can't live on a busy street anymore. They want to live in a quiet neighborhood like yours, with big trees so that kids can run. And even better, you're closer to Maxey Elementary, the school district they want to get into. So I was wondering, do you know of anybody who might be wanting to move soon? And if you do, give them my phone number, right? So a very non-intrusive, but a very descriptive voicemail. So he dropped that voicemail. He actually sent an email with sort of the same verbiage to all the emails he got within the neighborhood as well from Cole. Fast forward, he had a retired couple where the wife replied to his email, but ironically, the husband responded to his voicemail. And they were looking to downsize. They hadn't got their house listed yet, but they were going to be moving into a retirement home soon. He brought his buyers to the property. They loved it. He got a pocket listing out of the deal. Everybody was happy, right? So, and then he leveraged that as a way to sell the people's house who lived on the busy street. Right. And so I would challenge everybody here to leverage low inventory as a way to do an outreach. So if you have clients that want to live by a specific, by their in-laws or by a golf course or around a lake, you could go into Cole, find all those homeowners and do an outreach specifically for them to create your own inventory, create your own listing. And thoughts on that one?
Yes, I have a couple things I want to point out for sure, and I want to make sure that the agents listening have this on their radar, because this is what you're describing as a service. Stop thinking of it as a tactic or a strategy, but like this is a unique value proposition that Zillow can't provide. They can't go on Zillow and find somebody that wants to sell, these pocket listings. So kind of think about that. I mean, people are always worried about, is Zillow going to put me out of business? This is something they can't do. Focus on the things that Zillow can't do, that technology in general can't do, and implement it. But I would imagine that these clients of John's that receive this above and beyond service are going to be referral partners for life. And, I always, really try to elevate the real estate industry because, you hear stats of, I was in a training the other day, it said like in 2013, 67% of the country had a negative, kind of interpretation of real estate agents. And then, fast forward to 2018, it's up to like 80%. People just don't like us. And that's because most of us are lazy and we're not professional and we're not out there providing a service. We're not proactively service people. We're reactively service people. So what you just described is a simple and easy way to do it. And I love the fact that, I have my team is a big power prospecting team. They've got to get on the phone, whether they like it or not. It's not the team for everybody, but that's what I love about real estate. It's not one size fits all. So if you're scared to death of the phone, it's not something you're going to do. The best thing you can do is be like John and say, listen, that's not me, because I'm not going to swim upstream. I'm not going to beat my head against a brick wall. I need to focus on what I'm actually going to consistently do day out, week in, week out. So I love that you pointed that out, because there are a lot of ways to make money. And when people hear this, like, Cole, it's about phone numbers, I don't want to call. So we kind of squash that, or debunk that fear.
Exactly. And one little trick that he shared as well, whenever he does these campaigns like this, now he does it for other, any opportunity he can, he'll do things like this. And he'll actually Google phone number. So for like $5 a month, you can get a local Google phone number in most cases. So he'll use that on his caller ID. So when he drops the voicemail, a lot of times he'll have people that will call back and will even listen to the voicemail, right? Or they got the voicemail and they're returning the phone call. But then when they call him back on that number that gets forwarded to his cell phone, he knows specifically that they're calling about the message that he just left earlier in the day or 2 days ago in regard to the Pine Oak subdivision or Edenton South neighborhood. And that way he tailors the message right away. And it's like, oh yeah, I left a message 2 days ago for you. The reason what house do you live in Edenton South? Right. It just really helps with that rapport as well. So a little trick there if you ever want to do that tactic. The last case study, goes back to Kyle Whistle. Similar to Greg Harrelson, he's just crushing it, right? So a top 100 agent nationwide. He's in San Diego, listed as the number 79 top agent in the country via Wall Street Journal recently. And similar to Greg, been a client of ours off and on for a decade, right? Because he understands the importance of data and leveraging that data to have conversations with people. And so when I interviewed him about his success using Cole, he talks about how he does exclusive open houses for just the neighbors on the Friday before, right? So he'll do a general open house every Sunday whenever he gets a chance for all of his listings. But he'll do one on the Friday night before for just the neighbors. And a lot of times he'll have a food truck stop by and be parked out in the driveway. And then it gives them a chance, an opportunity to call to contact the 500 neighbors or 200 neighbors, whatever it is. But calls, emails, door knocks. He actually sends a postcard, like a nice looking postcard, inviting the neighbors to the open house as well. A few things that he also does. Anybody who stops by, he makes them sign in and gets all of their contact information, right? He asks lots of questions, right? Similar to Greg Harrelson, because a lot of times the neighbors who do stop by, they're the nosy neighbors, right? They want to see what the inside of the Joneses house looks like so they can compare it to theirs, because they might be looking to sell as well. And if the Joneses can get $500,000 for their house, gosh, we might be able as well. So he asks questions Where are you from originally? How long have you been here? What do you love about the neighborhood? What don't you like about the neighborhood? Right? To start engaging with these people. And he says if it helps you sell the house, that's great. However, the ultimate goal when he does this is it helps him create meaningful relationships with the neighbors, right? He wants to know the neighbors. He'll say things too that, when he goes on a listing appointment, he'll leverage this as a way to get the listing, right? So just by telling Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you go with me, if you're interviewing other people, but if you go with me, I'll personally contact the 500 closest neighbors in your neighborhood and ask them if they know if anybody wants to move in the neighborhood, right? And I'll invite them to an open house, right? It'll help you get the listing. But Jason, one thing he shared with me that I thought was unique is that he goes, he lives in San Diego and he works with higher price point homes. So sometimes they stay on the market a little bit longer than he hopes, right? And when it's time to ask for a price adjustment, sometimes that's kind of a tricky conversation to have. So he can say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, these are all the things that I did to help you get your house sold. I called all the neighbors. I emailed all the neighbors, did an open house. It's probably the price point. It might be time for us to reduce the price. Just by saying that you'll do these things that we talked about today could help you get the listing once you're on that appointment, and then help you get the price reduced to help you get it sold as well.
Yeah, and Kyle's one of the agents I know the best out of the three case studies that you're talking to us about today on the podcast. And the biggest point I was going to bring up is the leverage that you can gain from this by talking about these strategies in your listing appointment. Because I think at the end of the day, most of us as real estate agents have kind of the same 24, 42 point marketing plan. And, Zillow and the syndication is, MLSs are doing that automatically now. So it gets harder and harder for us to distinguish ourselves as the professional. And I go back to the reactive approach versus the proactive approach. I buy a lot of leads, or I put my listing out there and I wait for other agents to sell it, or you can actually go sell it yourself. And while you're doing that, you're cultivating all these other relationships, like you said, and all these other leads and opportunities. But one thing I know about Kyle is that this also gives him, he's a content marketing machine, and this gives him a ton of content. I mean, he's got a videographer that follows him around. Mm-hmm. And so with the food truck and the open house signs everywhere, I mean, there's just tons and tons of content mm-hmm. that comes from this. So, just kind of keeping that in mind. I just think agents a lot of times they have this narrow lens and just kind of broaden it up and go, gosh, this is a great strategy, but I could also use it in a listing presentation. I could also use it to leverage my buyers to find pocket listings. It's just endless. It's on and on and on. It has this very collateral effect. So, yeah, I could talk about this all day. I just love it.
Oh, no, and I love it. And my favorite thing about Kyle is completely off topic, but that he rescues potbelly pigs and has a sanctuary for potbelly pigs. So,
yeah.
So it just cracks me up about him as well. So I love it. And you talk about, different ways to use the data. I didn't tell it early on, but, again, we're used in all different industries, right? So I'm telling you all the different ways that real estate agents use data, but insurance agents use us, carpet cleaners, anybody in home services that want to, get hyper local and network with the neighborhood. And I tell the story 15 years ago. I remember Law and Order, the TV series. They called our marketing team and asked for us to send a set of printed directories, the crisscross directories, out to the TV set because, we have police departments that have used our data for years. And so they wanted them on the set to open up a crisscross directory and call everybody in the apartment building in Manhattan to see if they saw, call the homeowners or the renters in the apartment building to see if they saw the break-in that happened, right? So there's all different ways to use data, right, in all different industries. So that's a fun story about Cole that I tell as well. But in summary, guys, price-wise, make sure to go to colerealtyresource.com /Jason Will. to make sure you always get the best pricing, to learn more about how Cole works. Again, that's COLE, Cole, realtyresource.com/Jason Will. Pricing right now is $125 a month with a 3-month commitment, or it's $9.95 for the year, and you pay one time and just use it as much as you want to. Again, we have names, addresses, landlines, cell phones, emails, and then other data attributes that you could search by, like income, credit range, hobbies, the vehicles that people drive. If you want to go after high-end luxury vehicle drivers, you could do things like that as well. Questions for me, Jason?
Well, I think the next step in this kind of educational process for the agent is to start looking at like scripts. And like one of the ones we use that our agents use, just real simple, is, you're calling people and just asking them if they've had thoughts of selling. But I just want to make sure that I pointed out that you guys have some videos on YouTube that are really informative, and they're all about different scripts you can use.
Yes.
Based on what type of avenue you're going by, whether it's an open house, what's the trigger. You guys got a video and a script to back that up. And it's also from the top producing agents that these are the actual scripts they're using. So just want to make sure I pointed that out, and I don't know if you have anything to add about that.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things we're always working on, right? Because we know we're data. And so our renewal rate is all based on of agents actually using it and having success with it. And there's sometimes it's scary. Well, what do I actually say? Or what email do I actually send? And so we're always having webinars and recording videos, interviewing the top agents and asking them to outline how they're having success with it as well. And I'll tell you this, we look at usage reports all the time, Jason, on, Mark Smith in Houston buys tomorrow, and we know who's going to renew or not renew, and it's all based off of usage. So it's very rare that somebody's actually logging in a couple of times a month and downloading lists that they stop renewing. Because once you're doing it and you're dedicating the time, whether it's 1 hour a week or 5 hours a week or 5 hours a month, whatever it is, you'll see success using our system. I know that, but it's putting the effort in, rolling up your sleeves, going old school, and making it happen.
Well, and that's a good point to end on, because we kind of talked about like the buying lead conversation. I think is really a hot topic in the industry right now, because you're seeing CEOs of big companies like Berkshire Hathaway talk about it this year in their keynote addresses at their big national annual conferences, about how agents are spending tens of millions of dollars on leads, yet the number of homes that are actually selling is not going up. And so that sends an alarming statistic out there to the market that the only people that are really making money are all these lead providers like Zillow, and the agents are just killing their profitability. And the old school, you talk about going old school. To me, the old school that you're referring to is building the relationship, getting back to a relational focused business versus a transactional focused business. And that's what I have to admit this. Hopefully I'm transparent about this often enough. But I know that I try to remind our audience that I got so caught up into this. Like, I was always looking for the bright, shiny object to throw money at, and just having Zillow, pay-per-click, I had every little thing that could generate a lead. I had virtual assistants posting Craigslist ads and just all this stuff. I got wrapped up in it all. And this is like, you can have all you need is a few products that produce big time results, and Cole is always going to be one of those go-to products. Enough said. Mic drop. That's a mic drop.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I bet if you looked at like the top 100 producers in the country, a good majority of them have used us for years, right? Because they know how to leverage data. But I don't want to scare folks as well. I have so many case studies of new agents, brand new in the industry, that have had success as well. And like you said, it's having conversations with people to create relationships and then nurturing those relationships throughout the cycle. And then it's a numbers game, right? The more calls you make, the more emails you send, the more conversations you have, the more relationships you build that turn into conversions.
Well, from a team leader perspective, I think the slippery slope is, a lot of times, we feel like, oh my gosh, especially when we're building teams and we get up 15 plus agents on a roster, we're like, we've got to be this big lead generator. What I have found is I create a roster of agents that feel this entitlement towards being fed. I want to be fed these leads. And we're like, really, they're a hard push right now on my team to get away from that. Number one, the agent loses their skills, or they don't know how to properly develop skills. They're just looking for the hot, ready buyer or seller lead of the day. But they need to hone their skills and get that more relational versus transactional. But I find way more value on the team of actually rolling up our sleeves and getting in the trenches, and that, because I'm not a big ISA guy and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm like, we need to be calling, we need to be personally developing relationships. Yeah. And, it's not a one-size-fits-all model for teams either. But I would just throw that out there because I know this is a fact. This is an irrefutable fact that most of the teams out there are not profitable. I mean, there could be a real estate coaching company that just comes out, and I'm sure there probably is, that recognizes the fact that most teams are created out of ego or because the team leader really doesn't want to be the one that rolls up his sleeves and does the dirty work, so he just hires people to do it for him. Whatever the reason may be, they're not profitable, and most of the times because they're spending money on too many shiny objects that don't deliver the ROI like Cole does. And this is not, I think the audience will recognize that this podcast is not an infomercial for real estate vendors. So that should be a testament of how much I believe in this product. So Tyler, thank you.
Appreciate it. Sorry if I talked a little too much there, Jason. I start getting going too, and
we are right on time. So,
all right. Well, thanks so much for the opportunity again, Jason. Again, everybody who's on the listening at home, you can go to realtyresource.com/Jason Will to learn more. Thanks, guys.
All right, Tyler. Appreciate you, man. That was good stuff. Thanks for listening to the Impact Agent Podcast. If you like the show and got something out of it, please like the Impact Agent Podcast on Facebook and rate and review the show on iTunes or anywhere you listen to podcasts. This really helps us grow the show and helps other agents find it. Please share it with your friends and coworkers as well. Want us to deliver the show to you via email every week? Then email me at jason@impactagentuniversity.com and we'll send you the show every week. Please let us know what you think about the show, what you like, what you don't, or possibly make a suggestion about a topic you want to hear. Email me at jason@impactagentuniversity.com or leave us a message on Facebook at Impact Agent Podcast. Until next week, everybody be productive, safe, and happy, and always keep learning. This podcast is produced by Johnny Gwynn at Deep Rod Studios in Mobile, Alabama, and is paid for and powered by ImpactAgentUniversity.com.